ABVS students, Michael here. Let's talk home tour videos. Now, this is something that I do professionally. So I've got a lot of suggestions for realtors who do this and who want to kind of take their marketing up a notch with their higher end listings. I see realtors do home tours videos quite often, and to be honest, I've got some recommendations for you in terms of spicing them up a little bit. One of the things I've found that realtors do when they do home tour videos is that they treat them like the photographs, and that's a big mistake. You have to remember that you're already getting photographs done of these houses, so you don't necessarily need moving photographs, and a lot of these home tour videos that you make end up looking just like moving photographs. What you want to do is add something a little extra. What that extra is depth and almost the tour and the story of the house. And we're gonna walk through that process here. So again, when you first walk into the house, what you're gonna wanna do is set it up just like your photographer would. And a good recommendation that I have is to actually film these when your photographer is in the house. Obviously you don't want to get into the way of your photographer. You kind of want to make sure that you guys aren't running into each other, but the house is going to be set up almost perfectly when your photographer is there to take photos. So if you're there with them, that's less work for you. You don't have to turn all the lights on. You don't have to prep the house, put everything away. It's just going to kill two birds with one stone. So if you can, be there with the photographer and just shoot a quick home tour video. But if not, let's just say you're walking into a dark house and you want to set everything up. You're going to set up just like your photographer would. You're going to turn on all the lights in the house. You're going to make sure all the clutter is put away. You want to make sure that all of the chairs are straightened. Everything is kind of neat and tidy, just like your photographer would when they're taking photos of the house. One of the couple key differences, things that you're going to want to do differently when you are setting up the house for a home tour. Number one, all of the ceiling fans should be on in the house. And the reason for that is that every shot you want to find as much motion as possible and incorporate that motion into the shot. So ceiling fans are a great thing that moves in a room. You want to make sure all of those are on. All of the rooms that have sinks, you want to make sure that the sinks are turned on in all of those rooms. Again, providing just a little bit of motion. Turn the sink on when you arrive at the room. Don't leave all the sinks on, obviously, throughout the entire time that you're in the home. But the sinks, again, and the ceiling fans are just create a good amount of motion in the house. So, okay, let's talk phone settings. Now, phone settings are important because you're gonna shoot these videos slightly differently than you would a normal talking head video, like a marketing video that you would shoot. One of the big key differences is you're gonna wanna make sure that you're shooting in 60 frames per second if your phone is capable of doing that. And the reason being is that when you edit a video clip that's 60 frames per second and you're editing it in a 24 frame per second timeline, and you're gonna render a 24 frame per second video, those 60 frames are actually gonna be stretched out longer, and it's gonna create a slow motion video. The slow motion video helps create smoother shots. It cuts out all those jitters and shakes that you might have as you're moving throughout the house. And it's just a more pleasing to the eye. Another thing that you're going to want to do is make sure that if you have the wide angle lens on your phone, use that. A lot of the newer phones are incorporating these ultra wide lenses, and they are fantastic for home tour videos. Wide lenses show more of the room, and of course, as always, we want to make sure that these rooms seem as big as possible. That's what buyers want, right? The wide angle lens also helps cut down on some of those jitters and shakes, so it serves a dual purpose. If you have a wide angle lens, use the wide angle lens on your phone. And finally, number three, if you have a gimbal, use the gimbal. It's not completely necessary, and especially if you have a newer phone, like a newer iPhone 11, the image stabilization on these newer iPhones is fantastic, and you can almost get away with not having any gimbal at all and just using handheld. But if you don't, we definitely recommend investing $100 in a gimbal. I think we're using a DJI Osmo. This is a number 2 here. We've got a number 3 over there. They're like $100, $120. It's totally worth the investment if you're gonna do these home tour videos. So use a gimbal if you've got one. Okay, let's talk about the order of operations here. When you create a home tour video, one of the most important things to remember is that you're gonna wanna create it just like a buyer would walk through the house. So the buyer obviously starts on the outside of the house, and that's where you're gonna wanna start. Now remember, when you create these videos and these clips, you can, when you're in the editing room, you can edit these together in whatever order you want. So you don't actually have to walk through the house when you're filming it in the order that the buyer would see it. But to save you time and to save some headache, I would recommend just going ahead and doing that if you can, because then when you import all of your video clips, everything's going to be in the order in which you want to put it. So it's going to save you time later on. But again, you're going to start at the outside of the house always, because this is where the buyer is. So when you're shooting the outside of the house, obviously you want to back up as much as possible so you can get as much of the house in the frame. Any key elements that you want to incorporate, if there's new landscaping or freshly trimmed trees or anything like that, always incorporate those into your shots. One of the things I like to do, especially with the outside shots, is to get the camera as low as possible and kind of approach the house from below. It kind of makes the house feel a little more grandiose. So I would get down real low like this, and I would move in on the shot like this, almost kind of gliding right above the grass and moving about 3 feet as I move. Okay, so once you've got the outside of the house, we're going to go in and then we're going to walk through all the rooms and we'll go over a little bit more detail about some of these shots that I'm actually getting. Okay, so here we are in the kitchen. I think the kitchen is probably one of the most important parts of these house tour videos, and really for selling a house in general, right? I mean, the kitchen is kind of the focal point of houses nowadays, and if you've got a nice kitchen, you really want to highlight it. So again, same thing, we've got all the lights on in the room. I'll probably come over here and I would turn on the sink. I'm not going to do it right now because I think it's going to add a lot of feedback to the audio, but I would come and turn on the sink as I get this shot, just to create some more depth, or to create some more movement. So one of the cool things, and what you just saw as we did outside, is I did a shot which is called the push-in. One of the things that agents tend to get wrong in their home tour videos is that they tend to create shots that are panning shots, simple panning shots, or even just static shots. Something like, if you're setting up and you're just showing a house, a room like this, or if you're going to show a panning shot and you show it moving like this. This is called a panning shot. And I think, unfortunately, this is probably one of the most boring shots than you can get, because this is really just a moving photograph, right? I mean, there's really nothing different here than from a photograph, other than just, you're just looking at one end of the room and then you're ending up at another end of the room. There's really not a lot of difference there. So what I suggest is replace all of those panning shots with what I call the push-in shot. And the push-in creates a lot more visual variety, but also simulates depth in these rooms. And that's really what we're going for, is you want to simulate depth in all of your videos. So what I would do is I would set up my shot. So I would look at the room and I'd see, what angle am I going to get this room at the best? And this, obviously, in particular, this is going to be the angle and how you approach this room. You're going to see all the cabinets. You're going to see this great backsplash here. You've got your center island. Everything is kind of visible from this position. So this is what I would choose. I tend to usually bring my camera down a little lower, and then if I can, actually tilt the camera up a little bit. So as the camera's low, I tilt it up just a little bit so you can see some of the top of this, especially here, because we've got some really nice cabinets go all the way to the ceiling. So I would start here, and then I'm going to keep my elbows and everything kind of locked in this position, and I'm going to rock with my body. So you'll notice I'm not doing this with my arms. And the reason I'm not is because my arms are less stable. And even though I've got a gimbal, it's not going to cut all of the shake out. So if I lock my arms and I use my feet, that's going to create a real nice, smooth shot. And it almost simulates a buyer walking through this house. That's why we do the push-in, is because it really simulates somebody just walking through the room. Another great shot to get, especially in the kitchen, is kind of hovering over a center island like this, or even a countertop if there isn't a center island. But a lot of houses nowadays, and this one's no exception, have really great countertops, granite, quartz countertops that you want to highlight. And in order to kind of kill two birds with one stone here, to create some depth in the shot and also highlight the countertop, what I would do is approach the countertop kind of at the corner here, so we still are on this, the center of the kitchen. And I'd approach the countertop, I'd set up my shot, And I'd do the push in. So in this shot, then you can see the granite countertop. And you can also get some really nice movement here in the front as I approach the countertop. And you're gonna wanna do it a couple of times. You see I'm going back and forth doing this. And the reason is just in case, you see there was a fly buzzing around here. If that fly got in my shot, I don't wanna use that shot. So I'm gonna do it a couple of times just to make sure I have a couple of choices as I'm doing this. And then I'd stop, and that would be a clip for this particular room. Okay, another great shot to get in the kitchen, especially if there are some really cool appliances that are going with the house, is to actually get shots of the appliances. So if you've got like a Viking stovetop or a Sub-Zero fridge or something that's really great that's going with the house, definitely highlight that in the video tour, okay? So let's pretend in this particular instance that we've got a fridge over here, and this is a Sub-Zero fridge. It's coming with the house. We wanna highlight it. What I would do is end up stepping back. I'd get down a little lower, and I do what I call here is kind of like an orbit shot or kind of a semi-orbit shot, where we're gonna move in kind of a single axis here, but we're gonna make sure that the camera pans a little bit so we keep the fridge in the center of the frame the entire time. So you can see here as I do this, I'm on my knees, and we're gonna bring the camera around, keeping the fridge in the center of the frame, and I'm also using this countertop here in the foreground to create some depth. And once again, it's all about creating different planes in your video to simulate depth of the shot. And again, I'm doing it a couple of times to make sure I got the shot. And that's it. If it was a cool fridge, I'm also going to want to make sure that people can see the logo on it. So I'm going to get a close-up of this as well, probably doing a very similar move, where I come close to the logo and I do kind of this little orbit shot where I'm just hovering around the logo real quick. We're gonna use probably 2 seconds of this shot, but I'm gonna capture probably 20 seconds of it just to make sure I got it. And those shots are gonna be butted up against each other in the editing room. So we're gonna show the wide shot of the fridge first, and then we're gonna go and we're gonna show the logo. All right, let's talk bathrooms. Bathrooms are tricky, and I'm not gonna lie, they're really hard to get, especially depending on the bathroom. Bathroom's the smallest room in the house. You're also dealing with a mirror, and obviously you don't wanna get yourself in the mirror as you're shooting this. So the angles are really tricky when you're doing bathrooms. And bathrooms are even more challenging if you don't have a wide angle lens on your phone like I don't here. So it's always kind of a tricky situation to get this bathroom and highlight any of the features that you want to feature without showing yourself in the mirror, but also without making the bathroom feel super small and cramped. So one of the tricks that I tend to do, you got to get low because you want to make sure that you're going to stay out of the view of the mirror. So we're going to get low. And what I'll do here is probably what we call a reveal shot. The reveal shot is where I'm going to take something that's in front of the camera to begin with, like this wall here, and I'm going to move the camera away from the wall to reveal the bathroom, and that's going to be our shot. And stuff like this is really cool, especially if you can't really get into the bathroom all the way to get the shot because it's a smaller bathroom. This is a great way to transition from one shot to another, and so we're going to start, I'll show you here, we're going to start with the camera right on the wall, and then I'm just going to kind of glide it left, and that's going to reveal the bathroom. And I might bring it down a little bit, and then we'll do that again. So this one might be a little trickier, but I'll show you, we'll do it again. We're going to reveal the bathroom, and then I might kind of bring it down and bring the camera up to show the vanity. Like that. And then maybe I'll get a second one where I'm kind of bringing the camera at a different angle just so I have options. So again, I'll do the reveal and I'll bring the camera up to show that shot. And then I have a choice afterwards in the editing room. Like that. But again, bathrooms are tricky. And so, you know, another option, and let's come in here real quick And this would work if I had a wide angle lens. This probably is not gonna work here because I don't have a wide angle lens, but what you could do is bring the camera all the way in the back here, set up your shot, and approach like this. Now this probably isn't gonna work here because my lens is not wide enough, but if I had a wider lens, you'd get to see the whole bathroom in this shot, and you get a little bit of movement. So again, it just kind of depends on the bathroom and what you're showing. I don't always show every room, and you shouldn't either, because we're going for pretty short videos here, these home tour videos, 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes tops, but nothing more than that. You don't necessarily need to showcase every single room, and a powder room like this is not necessarily something that you need to have in the video, but you might want to incorporate more shots in a master bathroom, and master bathrooms tend to be a little bigger. So pick and choose the rooms that you incorporate, but if you have to work with a bathroom like this, just make sure you get the angles right. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about depth and creating these different planes in our shots. So I'm here in the living room, and I want to get a good view of this room. I've got a really great view of the kitchen in this direction. I've got the fireplace here. I've got a nice big window here, and I've got this couch in the center of the room. What I'm going to do is I'm going to incorporate this couch into the shot. And obviously the couch doesn't come with the home, but I'm using this couch as something that's going to be in the foreground of the shot to create movement, and also gives you a sense of the space and how big the room is. So I'd come down over here. I'd probably I'd get on my knees a little bit, and I'd make sure that I was kind of bouncing on my knees, so I was able to have more control over this gimbal. I'd hit record, and as you can see here, I've got the pillows of this couch in the foreground. You can see the kitchen and the window over here. And I would end up moving my knees like this and kind of orbiting around the couch just a bit. So you've got the pillows moving in the front of the shot, and the kitchen kind of coming into view behind. And so not only am I moving my knees like this, but I'm also turning the camera just slightly so that kitchen stays in view. So you'll notice most of the time I'm doing these shots, I'm not moving my arms at all. I'm always moving my legs, my knees, because I have more control over this part rather than this part, which tends to be a little looser and can create more jitters. So whenever you can, bend your knees and use that to your advantage to create some of these smoother shots. Okay, here we are at a bedroom. And once again, bedrooms vary in size just like bathrooms. So they can be tricky depending on what kind of lens you have on your camera and how you want to get this shot. But we're always going to make the room as big as possible and to show as many of the features of the room as possible. So for this particular shot, I would probably, once again, just like I did in the bathroom, do a reveal shot and use this door frame as kind of the part that hides the shot until I'm revealing it. So we'll do this a couple of different ways. We'll start here and we'll get a regular reveal shot. Again, I'm going to get down, bend my knees, and I'm going to approach and bring the camera around. So we end up seeing just the little corner of this wall right over here. So once again, we'll do that again. I'm going to reveal the room, and I'm going to bring the camera around just to see it. Now what you could also do is you could approach this room head on and have it be a little bit of a longer shot and actually take a couple of steps. So you could approach this room and use the door frame to frame the shot, and then bring it in, and then bring the camera around to reveal the room. So once again, the door frame frames the shot in the beginning, and then we approach and then bring the camera around. Like so. So another option that we could use, again, if you've got a wide angle lens on your phone, is to get into the corner of the room like this, on your knees, and bring the camera up so you can see the ceiling fan. And this is again why we turn the ceiling fans on in the room, because we want to make sure that every shot has some sort of movement in it. So I could be down here, I could record, I could set up my shot, and I could bring my body through like this. Now for this particular shot on my phone, it doesn't necessarily look as good because I don't have the wide angle lens. I would probably use the shot over there at the door. But if you had a wider angle lens, you'd be able to see more of the ceiling and more of the floor and everything in the shot, and you'd actually get a good view of this room as you did the pushing. All right, let's talk about something a little more advanced, but something that's really popular in home tour videos nowadays. So one of the big things that you see in a lot of these home tour videos are these kind of long tracking shots or these long walking shots where you really get a sense of the room and how big it is and the things that are around it. But they're trickier to do because everything that we've been doing so far, I've been moving maybe 1.5 feet, 2 feet in terms of distance. And I've been rocking my body like this. That's how I've been getting the movement. In this instance, we're actually going to walk, and these can get a little trickier. So even if you're using a gimbal, the gimbal is not going to hide the up and down movements. It'll hide these movements and these movements, but it's not going to hide these movements. So you have to make sure that you hide those movements with the way that you walk. Now, there's a very specific way that you walk when you do this, and we do it heel to toe, and it looks really goofy when you do it. And a lot of the times, what they say is the goofier you look doing it, the better it's probably going to look when you get the footage back. So you're going to bend your knees, and again, you're going to keep this as stable as possible. And then as you walk, you're going to heel to toe, like that. Almost like a rocking motion with your feet. Works really well if you don't have shoes on. All right, so for this particular shot, we're gonna get down on our knees, we're gonna bend our knees, and we're going to keep our shoulders and our elbows kind of locked into our body. And we're gonna walk through the room, heel to toe, like this. And I'm gonna bring the camera around. So we almost orbit the entire room. And you can do this with any kind of long walk that you would have in any house. So a long hallway, or showing the transition from one room to another. So let's say I wanted to walk from here and show the living room, and I wanted to show how the living room was connected to the kitchen. So I might start here and kind of push in on the living room, and then I might move over here and show the kitchen here. Or vice versa, we can start from the kitchen. We could show that this house has a really great vaulted ceiling here. So I tip the camera up and we push in like this. And then bring it around. It's a little more of an advanced shot. You got to get used to the way to walk, because you really want to cut out all those steps. Something like that. So in most of my shots, you can see that I'm kind of incorporating some sort of forward movement, but I'm also kind of bringing a pan into it as well. So it's usually 2 movements. Even if I'm just pushing in, oftentimes I'll push in, but then we may end up over here, because that ends up being a little more of a dynamic shot. All right, and let's talk about one more, a little more advanced shot. And we use this every once in a while, but it gets harder to do in longer distances. It's called the orbit shot, or kind of a semi-orbit shot. And it's really where we want to highlight a particular feature of the house. So in this instance, we're going to talk about this fireplace here. I really want to show that it's a really nice big fireplace. It's got painted brick, but I want to make the shot as dynamic as possible. So I'm going to approach the fireplace kind of from behind here. Again, I don't have a wide angle lens on this phone, so I'm going to stand a little farther back. I'm going to line up my shot, and I'm going to bring the camera around in kind of a semicircle. Move some of these pillows out of the way. Bring the camera around in a semicircle and keeping the fireplace in the shot the entire time. You're just highlighting different perspectives of the fireplace. And in this instance, a bonus here is that we've got the light from the ceiling reflecting on from that mirror and shining into the camera, which creates this really cool, like, glowy effect. So again, we're kind of moving the camera at this angle, and we're moving it around like this. So we're keeping the fireplace in the center of the shot, and the camera is just kind of orbiting around it in a kind of a semicircle. It's great for featuring any major element of a house. Okay, let's talk about windows. Windows are tricky with video because most likely your camera is going to auto-expose during the whole process of you filming. So as you move from light areas to dark areas, the camera is going to adjust its exposure. But what that means is that you're going to see these kind of flickers sometimes happen in your footage. But sometimes you want to feature like a nice window in the house, or a window that has a great view or something. So in order to do that, one of the great features that a lot of our phones have now is called exposure lock. And so if you want to utilize this, it's super easy. What I do is approach the window and show the view from the window to let your camera adjust to this particular exposure. I'm going to push my finger on the screen, and I'm going to hold it down until it says AEAF lock. And what that does is locks the exposure, and actually in this instance locks the focus as well, so you don't have focus flickering. Now if I wanted to adjust that exposure because I didn't like that particular, like where it locked at, I could bring my finger on the screen, and this is on an iPhone here. I can bring the slider up, and you can see the image get brighter, and I could bring the slider down, and you can see the image get a little darker. So you can fine tune this as you see fit. Most likely the camera is going to do a pretty good job just automatically, but I'll bring this up just slightly so we can see the outside really well, and I'll leave it there. And then I'll come back, and you'll notice now that if I show the room in any other instance, it's super dark. You're not going to be able to see anything. You're not going to be able to see anything on my screen because it's really dark, because it's exposed now for outside. But what I would do here is I might approach this window now, because now I can back up. The camera will keep its exposure on the window, and it's not going to do all this crazy flickering. I'll back up and I'll get this view, a dead-on view, which has got a really nice picture of the tree here, and I'll just do a push-in. And that's showing the view in context to what's happening in this room. So it shows that if you're standing in this room, here's the view that you're going to be looking at. And you won't have to worry about the camera adjusting its exposure constantly and flickering, which gets really annoying and is really a kind of a telltale sign of an amateur. All right, guys, that is our home tour walkthrough. Now I want to remind you we have a handout for this training. It's available for download in the campus. It goes over everything that we talked about here, probably a little bit more. Take that handout, print it out, save it on your phone, whatever, because that's a great way to remind yourself of some of these things to do, especially when you're first getting into these home tours. Eventually though, as you do these home tours, everything is going to become natural to you. You'll start to experiment with some of these shots. You'll understand, you'll learn the features on your phone and your gimbal, and everything will just kind of become natural. And you won't have to bring a PDF along with you to remind you of all of these things to do. So I appreciate you guys being here for this one. This is a fun one. We've got next training coming up is actually how to edit this and how to manage all of these files and put this all together when you're in a phone app on your phone. So stay tuned for that one. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you on the next training.